Okay, let's get right into it. When a new king comes to power, the whole kingdom kind of holds its breath. But in 17th century England, there was one entity that held more than its breath. It held the purse strings, and that was the City of London. So we're going to talk about the incredibly complex, absolutely critical, and, let's be honest, often pretty coercive financial relationship between King James I and the economic powerhouse that basically bankrolled his entire kingdom. The title London gave itself back then is just fascinating. You see it here, the King's Chamber. Now, this wasn't just some flowery nickname they came up with. No, it really signified this incredibly intimate connection they felt they had. The city saw itself as the very heart of the king's finances, the secure vaults that powered the crown. All right, so picture this. The year is 1603. Queen Elizabeth I is dead, and James VI of Scotland is about to become James I of England. And who is right at the center of making sure this all goes smoothly? You guessed it, the City of London. In fact, the Lord Mayor's name was put right at the top of the official proclamation, even above the Archbishop of Canterbury. I mean, that tells you everything you need to know about the city's political muscle, right? So right off the bat, there's this kind of honeymoon period. The city starts sending these really flattering letters to James, beautifully summed up on this slide here. They mourn the loss of a mother in Queen Elizabeth, but at the same time they're celebrating the arrival of a father in King James. This language, it set up a really crucial dynamic. The king needed the city's loyalty and its, vast wealth, and the city needed the king's favor to protect its trade and to keep growing its influence. But this whole partnership, it was about way more than just loans and nice letters. It was about raw ambition. It was about building a modern city. See, London was growing like crazy, but it was also dirty, dangerous, and constantly getting hit by the plague. The city desperately needed some big, grand solutions, and it knew it had the power to make them happen. And a perfect example of this ambition is one of the biggest infrastructure projects of the entire era, the New River. The plan was to dig a nearly 40-mile channel to bring clean drinking water from the countryside right into the heart of London. The city had the legal authority to do it, but the source material says they were, and I quote, appalled at the enormity of their own proposals. Basically, they got cold feet. And this is where you see just how unique their partnership really was. A private citizen, this goldsmith, Hugh Middleton, he steps up and takes on the project himself. But when his money runs out, and it does, it's the king himself who steps in. And not with a loan, but almost like a modern venture capitalist. James I agrees to fund half the remaining work, but in exchange, he gets a 50% stake in the whole thing. The crown literally became a key investor in the nation's infrastructure. So we go from this kind of collaborative project at home to something way more coercive abroad. The Plantation of Ulster. After confiscating a huge area of land in Northern Ireland, the crown needed someone with truly deep pockets to go in and colonize it. And really, there was only one candidate for that job: the City of London. The crown didn't present this as a burden, of course. Oh no, they pitched it like the business opportunity of a lifetime. The sales pitch promised everything you see here: fertile land, great fishing, a convenient place to send London's so-called surplus population. It was basically a massive real estate deal, all wrapped up with the promise of incredible profits. Of course, the merchants in London, they're no fools. They were skeptical. I mean, this was a huge financial risk in a notoriously dangerous part of the world. So how did the crown get them to sign on the dotted line? Well, the methods they used were, let's just say they were persuasive. So when the city sent 4 wise, grave, and discreet citizens to check out the lands for themselves, the crown basically pulled a fast one. Secret instructions were sent ahead. The inspectors were to be led by the best roads, they were only to stay in Englishmen's houses, and any potential problems, or as they put it, matters of distaste, were to be completely hidden. They were given a carefully managed 5-star tour, and it worked like a charm. So now that London is on the hook for these massive projects, things, they start to get a little tense. The dynamic shifts. King James increasingly began to see the city not as a partner, but more like his own personal and infinitely wealthy bank. Just to get the Ulster plantation started, the city proposed raising £15,000. The crown's response? They found this amount much distasted. It was basically a royal snub. It just wasn't enough. So they applied some pressure, and the city was forced to up its commitment to this initial sum of £20,000. But that was just the start. As costs always do, they spiraled, and the crown just kept coming back, asking for more. In the end, the city's companies were forced to raise a grand total of £52,500 for the project. That is a staggering sum, and it's nearly triple their original, distasteful offer.
And this wasn't just about the Ulster project. The king's personal borrowing was relentless. As you can see from this timeline, the demands just kept getting bigger and bigger. There's a loan in 1604, then a massive £100,000 loan in 1610, for which repayment was constantly being pushed back. By 1614, when James comes back asking for another 100,000, you can see the relationship is really starting to fracture. The city flat out refused the loan, offering a gift of £10,000 instead, which was basically a polite but very firm way of saying, the king's bank is no longer open for unlimited withdrawals.
And it wasn't just about the money. Major national events, like the infamous gunpowder plot, they put all these new and heavy responsibilities on the city, which just tightened the tension between these two great powers. I just love this little detail from an official proclamation. In the incredibly paranoid aftermath of the plot, a wanted poster describes one of the conspirators with this incredible specificity. It notes he looketh a-squintin' and is very purblinded, which means he squinted and was partially blind. It just brings the era to life, doesn't it? London was a city absolutely gripped by fear, and the mayor was responsible for all this heightened security, all while trying to deal with the king's never-ending request for money. So here's the bottom line. You have a city that's getting richer, more organized, and more aware of its own power, but it's shackled to a crown that's getting deeper and deeper into debt and more demanding. This fragile partnership, which was born out of mutual convenience, was becoming seriously imbalanced. And it really leaves us with a huge question. What happens when the king's bank finally decides the king is a bad investment? This exact tension would set the stage for the explosive conflicts that were just a few decades down the road.